Hello and welcome to this webinar, part of a series that we're doing on managing iPads in school. Apple change things from time to time and new products come along, and we like to keep you up to date with those. In today's webinar we're going to cover Apple's management tools, changes that have happened in Apple School Manager since last time, and we're going to look directly at integration with MDM. For an MDM solution we're going to look at Lightspeed Mobile Manager this time. We'll talk about how you get Apple School Manager, how you deploy iPads using MDM, and how you distribute apps. And we always like to remind you this is all about what we're trying to achieve here with these management solutions. One of the things obviously we'd really like to achieve is to make the IT coordinator or network manager's job as easy as possible. But of course the main reason we're doing all of this is for teaching and learning. So the advantage of using a proper management solution is the sheer speed and versatility and agility that you can achieve when you're configuring iPads to use with children in school. The other thing is there's always new tools coming along. Apple had announced Apple Classroom a little while ago, and they're adding to that suite of classroom tools now. They've announced Apple Schoolwork, which is in beta at the moment. More on that when we get it. If you haven't seen Apple Classroom, this is what it looks like. This is a screenshot from an iPad, although it will soon be working on Mac as well. Classroom allows a teacher to see what pupils are doing on their iPads wirelessly, but also to do things like push all of the pupil iPads into a particular app or onto a particular web page. It's a spectacular management tool. It does take a bit of setting up. We're not going to cover that today, but we'll be mentioning it in passing. So Apple School Manager is your link with Apple for deployment and app purchasing. Just to look at its history, in 2010 Apple released the Volume Purchasing Program, or VPP, which allows schools to buy app licenses in bulk and actually get a discount on them. When you buy 20 or more apps in volume purchasing, you get them for half price. They followed that up in 2014 with the device enrollment program. This was the first step in simplifying getting iPads out of the box and ready to work. A big step up from Apple Configurator, which is the Mac program that people have been using up to then. If you're still using Configurator, then you really need to watch this webinar, and we'll explain why that's not the way to do it anymore. And then in 2016, both of those two programs were consolidated together to form Apple School Manager. We call it ASM for short. There are extra things in there as well, things you couldn't do before, like you can now create Apple IDs in bulk effectively with one mouse click. We'll talk a little bit about that as well and why that's important. So looking at Apple School Manager first, what is it? Well, it's a combined portal for all of the things that we were doing separately before. How do you get it or upgrade to it if you've already got VPP or DEP? And how it manages people, iPads and apps. Now we need to make a distinction between Apple School Manager and mobile device management. So mobile device management, or MDM, we're going to be looking at Lightspeed Mobile Manager today, but we could equally be talking about Jamf Pro, AirWatch, ZuluDesk, Meraki, and many other MDM solutions that are out there. The differences are, in Apple School Manager you can purchase licenses for apps. It's very important to realize that you must buy an app license per iPad that you're using. If you have 50 iPads, you need 50 licenses for any app that you're going to use. You can't just use one. It also allows you to catalog all of your iPad purchases, so very easily list the serial numbers of any iPads that belong to you. You can add in your users, pupils and staff. You can give those people Apple IDs, and you can organize them into classes. All of that happens inside Apple School Manager, which is a free portal from Apple. Mobile device management will cost you money. There aren't any free ones strictly at the moment. and they're usually cloud-based subscription products. What mobile device management allows you to do is to install the apps that you've purchased licenses for, deploy the iPads whose serial numbers you've logged, associate your users with those iPads if it's one-to-one, or for staff iPads where the staff have iPads they carry with them and use all the time. You need to say which iPad is being used by which person. You can also set restrictions, and you can change settings on the iPads remotely, and we'll look at that today. And also for safeguarding, you can see what apps have been installed, and you can hide or delete apps that shouldn't be on there. So how you get Apple School Manager, if you don't already have any of the Apple programs and iPad is a new thing for you, simply go to school.apple.com and sign up. And what you need to know is that the person who signs up will need to add in contact details for someone senior in the school, preferably the head teacher, and the head teacher will be contacted by Apple and will be expected to approve this application. So in other words, it's not a good idea if the head teacher is the person who applies, because then you have a conflict of thinking, well, I need to find someone more senior than the head now to approve it. So if you have an IT coordinator, a network manager, an e-learning specialist teacher, they're the person who should apply. You can also upgrade to Apple School Manager if you already have VPP or DEP, but it's important to know which scenario is right for you. There are different ways of doing this. So I'm going to go through the 4 most common ones now. If you're not sure, contact us and we'll help you with this. The first scenario is you have VPP and DEP already, and both of them use the same email as a login. This is very straightforward. You go to deploy.apple.com, you sign in with your email login, and you click the upgrade button, which will be bottom left in the main window after you've logged in. So that's nice and straightforward. If you upgrade, you may be asked for your VAT number. Just bear that in mind. It might be worth having that to hand before you click the upgrade button, but it's very straightforward to do. There's another scenario which is not exactly the same though. You have VPP and DEP, but both of them use different email addresses. This is quite common for early adopters of VPP who signed up for DEP later. You'll find that it asked you to create a second email address. If that's the case, then again go to deploy.apple.com, but log in using the DEP login, and you should find that you can upgrade in the same way as we've just described there. Once that's done, you can invite the VPP email address to join, so it links them both back together so that you can use the same email address from that point on. The third scenario, you only have VPP, but that does work if you try it at deploy.apple.com. Try and log in there. If that works, again, you'll see the upgrade button and you can just go ahead and upgrade. And once you've upgraded to Apple School Manager, you'll find that you have DEP functions automatically. If you have a very old VPP account, congratulations, that means you were an early adopter, by the way. You might find that it doesn't work at deploy.apple.com. If that's the case, set up a new Apple School Manager account at school.apple.com, and then once again invite that VPP address to join, and it will merge the two together for you. If you're not sure, get in touch with us and we'll ask you some questions and work out which scenario is for you. Once you've set up Apple School Manager, when you log into it, you'll see that it's broken into sections on the left hand side there. The main sections that we're interested in are people, devices, and content. And people is all of your users. So this is teachers, this is admin staff potentially, and certainly pupils. And you can see in the list there, most of the accounts that you can see are student accounts. Now, if you want to add people in bulk, the way that you do that is you click on the little logo in the top right hand corner there, drop that down. This is where you sign out, by the way, when you've finished. But you'll see that there's a Setup Assistant. If you click on the Setup Assistant, it opens a screen which allows you to do two things. You can link Apple School Manager to your school information system. Now, the reason we're not going to talk much about people today is that this is still not happening natively with SIS systems like SIMS. That's still some way away, we think, but there are third-party tools that will allow you to do that synchronization. We'll talk about those more in a future webinar. The other option for importing people, Setup SFTP, means that you create spreadsheets from your SIMS exports and you import those spreadsheets into Apple School Manager. It's a little complex to do, takes some time, but it is possible and it does work. So if you're interested in either of those methods, get in touch and we'll go through that with you. Once you've imported all of your users in, then you can assign roles to them as well. So here Hermione is simply a student. She's been set up, she's been given an Apple ID, as you can see, and a 4-digit passcode is all she will need to be able to use that ID. In primary, that's very useful. You don't want people to have complex passwords when they use these Apple IDs. For a member of staff, you could assign different roles. My role here, for example, I have 3 different roles. I'm a site manager, which means I can turn other admin accounts on and off. I'm an instructor, which is a teacher. And I'm also a content manager, which means that I'm allowed to buy apps and books. So those are my roles there. One thing I would always recommend that you do is you'll find that Apple School Manager uses 2-step verification. Every time you log in, it will want to send a text message to your mobile phone with a code that you need to use to log in. Now that's a liability if you only have one mobile phone number on there and that member of staff leaves or changes their phone number. So what I'd suggest you do is go to appleid.apple.com, type in your Apple School Manager login, and then under security you can click the edit button and you can add more phone numbers. I would certainly advise you to have at least 2 mobile phone numbers on there of people that you trust, maybe your network manager or IT coordinator, but also perhaps the school business manager or the head. That way if a member of staff leaves, you can still get in there, or if someone's off long-term sick or something like that. So that's people. The next section is for devices, and we're going to have a little look now at deploying devices using these tools. So the main window for devices allows you to enter the serial numbers of iPads that you've purchased and then choose the action of assigning those to your MDM server. And what that does then means that the MDM server is ready to manage those devices without you having to put them into Apple Configurator to do it, using this system called DEP. Now just to clarify exactly what DEP is and how it works, this is the order that things happen. The school will order some iPads from a reseller. The reseller must be part of the DEP program. That's a question you should ask whoever you're buying your iPads from. Jigsaw and 13 other resellers are ASE resellers, Apple Solution Experts for Education, and we're all members of the DEP system. Apple stores are also part of the DEP system, but if you're buying through a local authority or through a smaller dealer of some sort, ask them if they're part of the DEP system and get them to confirm that before you purchase any iPads from them. The reseller will then enroll your serial numbers into DEP when you buy your iPads. The DEP system will already have been set to hand over those iPads to your chosen MDM, Lightspeed in this case, and you set up an enrollment profile within the Lightspeed MDM environment to tell the iPads what they should look like once they've enrolled. Then on delivery day, the iPads arrive in your school, you open the packaging, You power them up and you connect them to Wi-Fi. Immediately you connect them to Wi-Fi, Apple will instruct Lightspeed to push that profile back onto the iPad. This sets the iPad up for the first time and enrolls it into your MDM solution. So the iPads are then configured and ready to go. And a few seconds later, about 30 seconds later, that iPad's ready to use. So it's much simpler than it ever used to be, and definitely a massive step up from using Apple Configurator. So to get DEP set up, what you need to do is go into Settings in Apple School Manager and click Device Purchases, and on the right hand side you'll see that there are 3 numbers there, 3 spaces that you can put numbers into. And this is what you need to do. Click Settings, click Device Purchases, add your iPad suppliers. So if you buy your iPads from an Apple retail store, they'll give you your Apple customer number and you put that at the top. If you're buying through resellers, you need to ask those resellers what their DEP number is, and you put those in the middle section there. So Jigsaw's DEP number is 2287450, for example. You can have as many suppliers as you like in here. And then finally, the section at the bottom, you need to tell us what your institution DEP number is. So anyone who you're planning to buy from, there's that swap of numbers there. You add their number in the middle section and you tell them your number. And that means that when you purchase some iPads, we tell Apple to add those serial numbers to your institution DEP. The other thing that you do in Apple School Manager is you add your MDM server. So you click Add New MDM Server at the top, give it a name, you swap a couple of tokens with your MDM, and we'll look at that a little bit today, but if you're not sure, just ask us and we'll tell you how that's done. Once you've set up an MDM, assuming that you only have one, and we actually have 3 as you can see because this is a demo environment, but if you have one, what you can do to make things easier is click the Edit button for your MDM and then tick all 5 boxes for default server and hit Save. And what this does is it tells Apple that every time a reseller enters some serial numbers, so every time you buy some iPads, they will be pushed through to your MDM by Apple automatically without you having to tell it to put them there. So that's the idea behind that. That's how DEP works. The only thing you then have to do, and you really only need to do this once, is to create an enrollment profile. So here in Lightspeed you can see that that's under Settings, Apple DEP. If you've used Apple Configurator, this will look very familiar to you. In the section in the middle, we're ticking some boxes there to say what we want to happen to these iPads when they're first enrolled. We want a supervision profile on them. We want to allow them to pair with a computer, so if someone plugs their iPad into a computer with a USB cable, that's fine. We don't want to give the user the choice of management, it's going to be mandatory, and the user is not able to remove the MDM profile. The section at the bottom there, we can skip some of those welcome screens that always come up when you first turn on an iPad. The only one I'm not skipping is location. I want to be asked if I want to enable location services. This is important because if I don't, then the clock will be wrong. It doesn't know where in the world I am. But I can safely skip all of the others if I want to. And then I create that profile. And then each time I buy iPads, I know that Apple School Manager by default is going to push them into Lightspeed. So the only action I need to take is to look in Apple DEP at my devices. I'll have a list of all of the serial numbers which Apple has pushed across, and I just need to assign my enrollment profile to them and click the tick boxes just to add that profile. What I'm doing there is I'm saying when the iPad is first activated and switched on, it's going to look to see what profile's been assigned to it, and Lightspeed is going to push that profile on. That will enroll it into Lightspeed. So just to recap that DEP process, you order your iPads from your reseller. The reseller puts those serial numbers into DEP. DEP's already been set to default to hand over to the MDM, and you've already set an enrollment profile, so all you have to do is tick it next to all of those serial numbers. That's the one action you'll have to do. Then when the iPads arrive, you switch them on and you connect them to Wi-Fi. It will connect with Lightspeed, push out that enrollment profile, and they're then configured and ready to go. And immediately then you can start using them for teaching and learning. That process will take about 30 seconds to have a fully managed iPad. It's definitely worth doing this. So once the iPads are enrolled in MDM, what does that mean? What can we do with them now? What other functions are available in MDM? Well, these are some of the things that we can do, and we'll look at these now. I'll show you how that looks in Lightspeed. The main one that everyone wants to do is to be able to install or update apps on the iPads without touching the iPads. Now that's been possible for some time now. Since the back end of iOS 9, it was possible to install apps without having an Apple ID on the iPad at all. It's completely seamless now. You push it out and the app just appears on there, even if the app's asleep in a trolley somewhere being charged up overnight. You can do the same with books and PDFs. You can do the same with web shortcuts. So if there's a web resource that I need my users to use every day, I can put that on the iPad so that it looks like an app. It's actually a shortcut to the web page. I can arrange my apps into folders and put them on different home screens. I could put all my maths apps in one folder and all my science apps in another, for example. I can hide or even delete apps that I don't want people to use. I can set restrictions, turn those on and off remotely, turn functions on and off, the camera for example, FaceTime, messages. I can mark an iPad as lost if it's lost or stolen, and it will show me where it is on a map. It will let me force that iPad to play a noise. If I know it's in school, I just don't know where it is. Being able to play a noise on there is very useful. And importantly, I can do this without having to use Find My iPad. Find My iPad relies on having Apple IDs again, so it was never ideal for schools. I can do bulk functions as well. I can rename all the iPads in a trolley, individual names, but do it all in bulk. I can reset forgotten passcodes. If it's a staff iPad and I insist that they have a passcode on there, they forget the passcode, I can reset that remotely. And I can power all the iPads down at the end of term so that when we come back in the new term, they've still got some battery charge left on them. There's lots more you can do with MDM, but that's just a handful of examples there. So this is the Lightspeed interface after I've enrolled an iPad. I've just enrolled one iPad, and this is for staff. So I've enrolled this and put it into a staff iPad group. And you can see there's a little bit of information just on this screen here. So the staff iPad group, I can see that it's in there. Here's the name of the iPad and some very simple information about it. But if I click on the name of an iPad in this list, this might be all my staff iPads, for example. There could be 20 of them in here. Click on one and I get much more detailed information about that iPad, what type of iPad it is, what battery charge it's currently got, what operating system versions on there, storage capacity and how much of that is left. And down at the bottom there, quite an important one is it checking in? iPads should check in once a day. The boxes at the top, I can see what apps have been installed, and I can remove apps from here if I want to, just on that one single iPad. I can set restrictions. I can see that very few restrictions are on this staff iPad. There'd be more on a pupil iPad. See what groups in Lightspeed it's a member of. I can see that it's a staff iPad. Have I asked Lightspeed to do anything and it's not happened yet? Nope, nothing's queued there. And in the options menu, I can reinstall apps and books, bring the inventory up to speed if it needs resyncing, put it into lost mode, clear the passcode if this staff member comes to me and they say they've forgotten their passcode. I can check to see whether there's any OS updates available for it, and below the line 1 or 2 dangerous ones. I can completely wipe the iPad here. That might be useful if it's definitely been stolen and it's never coming back. It's got sensitive information on it. I want to make sure it's wiped. And below that you can see the power options. This is where I can, for example, put it to sleep or turn it off. So let's look at apps next. Back in Apple School Manager, there's a relatively new page in here now called Apps and Books. This is where I can do all my app purchases from now on, rather than doing them in the separate VPP store website where I've had to go up to now. So under Apps and Books I can see any licenses that I've already bought, but notice if you look down that list, the second one, for example, isn't an app at all, it's a book. So you can buy iOS apps, Mac apps and books in here. So if you're searching for a new app, just make sure you're getting the right one, just in case it's available in multiple formats. If I want to install a new app, let's say Adobe Spark Video, which is a lovely little video creation app, I search for its name at the top, click it in the list. I can view details if I want to get more information, just to make sure this really is what I'm looking for. And then I come to buy the licenses. I choose the location that I want to buy licenses for. Most schools will only have one location, but you can have multiple sites or multiple departments if you want to, by creating more than one location. So choose the location if you've got more than one. Put the quantity of licenses in the box, and remember you must have one license per iPad. If it's a free app, it really doesn't matter how many you order. For a paid app, just bear in mind that if you order 20 or more, they will be half price. So don't order 10 to 19. There's no point in doing that. You could order 20 and you get them for the same price. And then once I've chosen the quantity, I click buy, and I'll get a confirmation that those licenses have been purchased. The section at the bottom is if you do have multiple locations and you've over-ordered for one location, you can transfer them to a different location. That might be departments in a secondary school, for example. If you do want paid apps, there are 2 ways that you can pay for them. You can enter a payment card into Apple School Manager, credit card or debit card if your school has one. If you don't have one or you don't want to do that, the other thing you can do is just send a purchase order to Jigsaw or an Apple store, they can do it as well, saying how much credit you would like, and we will get an electronic voucher code sent to you which will add that credit to your School Manager account. We then just send you a standard invoice. So that might be easier than attaching a credit card. Now back in Lightspeed, I now want to apply the app that I've just purchased to my staff iPad. So this is how I'm going to do that. It's in Apps in the column on the left hand side. First of all, make sure you know what group you're in. This is where the app is going to go. Click on Apps. I've got 3 tabs at the top there. Assigned apps are apps which have only been applied to staff iPads. Inherited apps have been pushed out from a higher level in Lightspeed, and that means that all the iPads in school have got these apps. And I also have a self-service store. That's a private app store. I can put apps in there and let people download them later themselves. I've only got one app for staff at the moment. That's Socrative Teacher. I click on my Apple School Manager Lightspeed token at the top. Here's all the apps that I've ever purchased. And the only one I want to add is Spark Video. I could tick more if there were other apps. And then apply now. And back in the list I can see I've now got Socrative Teacher and Adobe Spark Video being pushed out to my staff iPads. And within a few minutes, usually 2-3 minutes, you'll see that app beginning to appear on the iPads. So it really is very straightforward, couldn't be simpler really. The next thing we're going to look at in Lightspeed Mobile Manager is policies, which include restrictions and settings. So let's have a look where that is. I'm now going to go to policies in the column on the left. So coming out of apps now, Policies is here. Click on that to open the policies page. Again, always make sure you know what group you're in before you touch anything. This is going to affect all the staff iPads. Restrictions is right at the top, and a list of all of the restrictions is here. I'm going to filter this by iOS because I don't want to see any that only apply to Windows or Android. It's iPads I'm interested in. The ones with the blue dot are restrictions which are being applied right now. So let's have a look at this one. At the moment I'm allowing the use of iMessage, and I've decided that I don't want to do that anymore. So I turn that off over here. Explicit sexual content is already being disallowed. That's for everybody in school. Not very many other policies for staff actually. I've got allow account modification here. That's set to on at the moment, so I am allowing people to enter an Apple ID. I may decide I don't want to do that, but for staff that's fine. I've given them all a passcode now. I got so fed up with them forgetting passcodes, and I don't want them to change that, so I'm going to turn that off. For student iPads as well, that's really useful. Don't allow them to enter a passcode. There's lots of other restrictions here. I'd suggest you just go through them all and familiarize yourself with them, but that's enough for now. I'm happy with that, and I'm going to hit save. And at the point that I hit save, those new restrictions will be fired out to the staff iPad. Within a few seconds really, you'll see those restrictions take hold. If for example I've said don't allow passcode modification, the passcode option on the iPad in settings will just simply disappear. You won't find it in there anymore. So that's how you set restriction policies. Now also on the policies page there are a lot more different types of policy. You can see all of these in the second column there. So we won't go through all of these, but you'll see as I've got Wi-Fi policies I can push out. I'm going to just look at web shortcuts for now. So for web shortcuts, I add a new one. I give it a label. I need to give it a name that's going to fit underneath something the same size as an app icon, so I'm just going to call this one BBC. Put in the URL. You'll see you don't need HTTP or anything like that. It'll sort that out for itself. I can choose whether I want this web shortcut to be removable by the user or not. It could be something that pupils have to use every day, so I don't want them to remove it. And as soon as I'm happy, I just save that, and that will immediately appear on all of the iPads in the group, the staff group in this particular case. So that's really straightforward. Now the next thing I want to do is just show you very quickly some advanced settings. These are extremely useful for doing bulk actions in Lightspeed, but it's not immediately obvious where they are, so I just wanted to show you that now. In settings, you'll find that there are some functions here for doing things in bulk, but you need to go all the way up to the top level using this navigator here. The top level or district level will give you a lot more settings than any of the other school or group levels. So at the top level, click on settings now, and you'll see a much longer list of things that you can do in here. So here's our managed distribution and DEP tokens that we swapped with Apple School Manager earlier on. I can switch Apple Classroom on and off. I can manage wallpapers from here. But I'm going to go for CSV import. This is where some of the bulk functions are, and you can see them listed here. So I can add devices into groups. I can update their names en masse. I can apply asset tags to them. Lots of things I can do, and some dangerous ones at the bottom like decommissioning devices. Underneath each one it tells you how to create the spreadsheet. Column 1 is the serial number. Column 2 is the group. Choose that spreadsheet and then import the file, and you'll find that all of them follow the same format. You're looking for a 2-column spreadsheet here, which must be in CSV format. And doing things in bulk like this will save you lots and lots of time. Now there's plenty to learn about Lightspeed Mobile Manager. If you're using it but you don't feel you're getting the best out of it, do call us. We do training in Lightspeed Mobile Manager, and we'll be happy to do that with you. For now though, here's some actions for you. If you don't already have Apple School Manager, go ahead and get it or upgrade to it if you already have VPP or DEP. Check with your existing suppliers whether they're part of the DEP program, and if they are, swap those DEP numbers with them. It's important to do that. If they're not, you might want to consider changing to a supplier who is. Make sure you add those numbers, swap the numbers with Apple School Manager to get DEP working. If you're not sure about MDM, you've heard of it but you don't have one yet, or perhaps you're using something like the old Meraki system and you need to change that to something more modern, then do give us a call. We can help you decide which is the best one for you. But and that's the email address on screen. education@jigsaw24.com is always a good way to get in touch with us. If though all of this sounds a bit too complicated, or you don't have anyone in school who has the time to be able to do this, maybe you get an IT support person in half a day a week and it's just not within the scope, do bear in mind that we can handle this management for you. We do a managed service for this if that's easier for you. We use an MDM solution called Jamf Pro, which is one of the top end expensive ones, and we can install your devices in here and manage them for you. So the way that would work is you'd pay £17 per iPad per year. Now that does include the Jamf license, so there's nothing else to pay on top of that. We do all of the setup that we've described today, enroll your iPads for you, and we'll push out apps and change settings for you whenever you want us to. Just give us a call or drop us an email and that happens instantly for you. We'll also add new iPads as you buy them. There's staff phone and email support included in that, and of course you don't need any time or any training, so you might find that that's cheaper than either employing someone or taking someone off timetable to do this for you. And while we're looking at services that Jigsaw provide, here's a list of them on screen now. We do supply wireless. We tend to go for wireless, which we know works perfectly with Apple. We do interactive touch screens. We also do non-touch screens, so giant TVs if you like, which are proving very popular where there's a lot of iPads in school. We have a big focus on teacher training as well, proper curriculum training to get the best use out of Apple technologies, but also technical training as well. If you are using some of these solutions and you need a bit more help, please do ask us about that. And we do AV as well, so not just interactive touch screens. We do green screen rooms, giant projectors, immersive spaces for SEND. Just give us a call if you're not sure. We do most things. So if you want to know more about any of these things, please do get in touch. We have a team of regional education managers, so there will be people in your area. If you just fire an email off to education@jigsaw24.com, we'll put you in touch with your local person who can come and have a look what you're doing and give you some advice.